Welcome to Inside the Upside Down. I'm Mike Ricksecker, author and ghost historian. With me, as always, is Shauna Wankel, also a fantastic writer in her own right. We're going to be talking about hitchhiker ghosts this evening, those vagabonds and drifters on the roadside that aren't always necessarily alive. I know some people are going to be wondering, because I talked about it this past weekend at the Psychic and Paranormal Fair up in Cedar Rapids, that I was going to be doing or we were going to be doing, storming Area 51 and what that is all about. Shauna, for the most part, is just going to be like, yeah, I believe in aliens, but, whatever. So that we could have a more... so we can have a better conversation for you guys. We're going to be talking about hitchhiking ghosts, because there has been something recent that's popped up with this. And we're going to be doing the storming Area 51 stuff later this week. Just watch the Haunted Road Media page, Twitter, my personal feed, and all that stuff for some information on that, because I'm going to be asking you guys some questions that we can talk about on that podcast, and actually we'll do live or something with it. We'll see how that goes. So I see there's Tracy Christian, Diane Hilbert. Hello, our Fairy Queen. I don't think our Fairy Queen got a shout out on the shout outs for the live on YouTube, because her name didn't show up in there again. There's Katie Birdie, David Y. Yep. Okay, great to see everybody down in there. Thank you. So, yeah, hitchhiking ghosts. You're kind of laughing.
Because mine scared the hell out of me.
Yeah. So Shauna had a recent personal experience, which is why we're talking about this evening. We're going to get into some other historic ones like Route 66. There's some in England. There's Resurrection Mary. We'll get into that stuff. Tom McNicholas can also talk about Resurrection Mary. He used to live right down the street from there. But Shauna had something come up here just recently, and then we've also had something happen together. But go ahead and tell what happened with you. It'll give me a chance to share everything out too. And share, everybody, please.
Yeah, I was just on my way home from work, just driving, just minding my own business. I wasn't really expecting anything or even thinking about anything. I knew Molly was in the car with me because she... because she's
sorry, trying to share it out.
Because she's in the vehicle a lot with me, and she's everywhere with me, but every once in a while I'll glance over and I'll kind of see a little flutter of something, and I'll know she's there, and then I'll acknowledge her and be like, I'm on my way. So I've gotten used, like, for a very long time, I always check the back seat of my car before I get in, if I'm out in public, and to make sure nobody's laying down in the back seat, especially if I'm in a bigger area. And so I'm driving down the road, and all of a sudden, from out of nowhere, I feel someone say something, like, right next to my ear, and it was a warm breath, and I could tell by the tone that it was possibly male. And I mean, their mouth, like, it actually moved to my hair, the air did, and it, like, touched my ear and scared the hell out of me. I wasn't expecting it. It totally caught me off guard. I almost went off the road. And then that was it. I mean, I looked in my mirror. There was nothing, in my back seat. And I had turned around, and finally, I was just like, pull over, like, get out of my car. Get out of my car. I didn't invite you. I had to clarify to Molly, you stay. Whoever is back there needs to go. Scared the crap out of me. I mean, I totally was caught off guard. Like, there was no even just a split second heads up or anything. And usually whenever something's getting ready to happen, there'll be like a split, second, a moment where I'll feel like a little buzz of something. That doesn't tell me whether it's going to be good, bad, or whatever, just that something is about to happen. I didn't get anything. But it always creeps me out too whenever a touch or like breath or something is warm. Because when Molly's around, her touches is cold. It's cool. But it always just weirds me out when something is warm. Because to me, it just doesn't seem like it should be.
Yeah, that's really different because normally when we always talk about cold spots at different haunted locations, and there's kind of the running joke when we're investigating someplace that's really hot that we hope we run into a lot of ghosts or spirits or whatever there so that they can cool us off. So that's really interesting that this was actually a hot touch rather than a cold one.
Yeah. Upstairs in the room where we met Molly, there's a man up there, the one that I don't like. Don't know who he is, but whenever he gets hands on, his touch is warm.
Your sister's in chat, says Shauna brings hitchhikers with her to my place sometimes.
Sorry.
I suppose it's probably true, huh?
Sorry.
Yeah, so, and then there was the hitchhiker, and then we'll get into some of the historic ones and everything, and we'll talk more. I know you guys are going to have questions too. There was the one that the first time that I brought you out to Ohio, we'd stopped at a rest area. It was actually on I-90 just east of Toledo, and we just did our usual thing, got some gas, got a snack, all that sort of stuff. It was at night, and from there, driving down the highway, there was somebody in the back seat.
Yeah, I kind of, blew it off the first time it happened because I just felt my hair move, and I was like, could have been just the way my shirt was moving, the movement of the car, whatever. Gravity just pulled a piece of my hair that was getting ready to fall, whatever. And so I blew it off. And then because I blew it off, whoever it was that was trying to get my attention made sure that I noticed that it wasn't just some random, because I actually felt, a hand like on my face, and I couldn't tell. I kind of feel like it was male, but I didn't see anybody. I didn't hear anybody. And I couldn't really tell that it was going to happen. Just all of a sudden, it was just there.
Right.
And we were like, you cannot be here. You have to get out of the car, and then we were wondering.
Yeah, and I'm driving at like 75 miles an hour, and I'm turning around, you need to get the hell out.
It's like, do you think, so we kind of wondered, that somewhere along that stretch of road, was there a hit and run or something like that?
I mean, there have been plenty of accidents up and down that road over the years. You kind of don't know, and could it even be something that you hitched a ride from somewhere else, just dropped off there, decided to leave whoever it was with, and like, these people look nice or whatever, tasty, I don't know. Decided to jump in with us. I mean, that could always be. It could have been somebody else's attachment that decided to ride along with us.
Yeah. And
there's so many people in and out of these rest areas. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to get in the car, fine, but just respect your boundaries. Don't be putting your hands on me or anything like that. It's probably okay.
Send some positive energy out for Wayne. Betty's husband is heading to the doctor tomorrow. Find out if what's going on is cancer or not. So we'll send some positive vibes out that way. I think also still available on Facebook is the donation option for my birthday this past weekend, where Facebook has that option to do donations for a birthday for a cause, and I chose one of the cancer societies. So any donations, of course, are always greatly appreciated for that. So, all right. This phenomenon, though, is... it's not new. It's something that's been reported for decades, basically ever since, there have been motor vehicles. There have been phantom cars, phantom hitchhikers. Even really before motor vehicles, people would see, ghosts along the side of the road.
I've seen that.
Before there were motor vehicles?
Well,
I didn't think you were that old.
No, you know what I mean? But I've seen phantom cars.
You've seen it? Yeah. And there's one here on 267 that you saw. What was that, near Bucks Crossing somewhere?
Yeah. Or well, just right here in town, I saw just this car coming up at the intersection, but there was no car there. It was just there and gone so fast. It just like a blink. I remember it was a red car.
But I remember you came home from work one night. And
yeah, I saw just it looked like it was a guy. It was a guy walking, but there was not much color to him. He did look like he did not belong. What is wrong with this picture type thing?
Mm-hmm.
He did not belong. So yeah, I truly believe, that was definitely a spirit, because I could see him, and he was there long enough for my lights to, get up on him and hit him. But then he just, for a split second, he just wasn't there anymore. Where'd he go?
Right.
So.
And it's kind of the way it goes. Betty Lang is saying we had a hitchhiker car last month, late, dark, and scary. And that's kind of what people report a lot is they'll see this person on the side of the road. They'll look out of place, might look out of time. And then sometimes, and this is kind of true, we'll just roll right into it. So Route 66, and it actually does go through Illinois. So it's the Mother Road. It's a decommissioned highway. It was very, very famous for a good stretch of the 20th century. This is actually it in Oklahoma in one stretch that is haunted, and then this is an old piece of it in Illinois. And so, this connected Chicago with Santa Monica, California, and then people would use it to travel cross country. The interstate highways basically killed this particular highway as parts of it were bypassed. Then they basically got shut down. So in 1971 they decommissioned Route 66. Of course, all the nostalgia has kind of been a big thing here the past couple of decades. People remembering and recalling Route 66. Of course, the movie Cars was based off of it. But what a lot of people report is stuff like this: the vagabond walking on the side of the road. I mean, does this look like your guy?
My guy wasn't quite so dark.
Your guy wasn't quite so dark. Okay.
Yeah, in fact,
that's my son Chase, by the way.
No. Well, yeah, my guy. I mean, the coloring kind of reminded me of Byron, because his clothing reminded me of like a faded, like older photograph coloring. Like
the sepia tone.
Yeah, like if you use like a filter or whatever. There was a slight bit of possibly a brown or something like that, but the rest of it was just all like grays and whites, and it just didn't look. It was just a lack of color, but it stood out with everything around everything else, because nothing else was
looked kind of apparition like.
Yeah, and I was kind of like, who is that? And not brave enough to stop. So I'm not going to stop if there's a human on the side of the road either. So it could be a trap, and that could be waiting there to like get in your car and kill you or whatever. So, I feel bad for hitchhikers, but not bad enough to stop and help them.
Well, you never know what you're going to get. You could get a gun to your face, and it happens, unfortunately. Robert Hanna says Resurrection Mary story is probably my favorite. We'll get to that one here in a little bit. Fran, legends say the hitchhikers take an item and leave it on a headstone. I don't know about that legend. I haven't heard that one about headstones. But what I usually hear is stuff like with this one, with the vagabond. This was my son Chase playing the part of the vagabond years ago, back on the old channel when we did the Fort Reno and Route 66 video. And so there are a lot of interesting stories associated with this particular vagabond on this stretch of road, where he'll be walking down the side of the road and you'll see him. And a couple miles later, you'll see him again. Same guy, walking the same way, doing the same stuff. A couple miles later, see him again. And so you keep seeing him every couple of miles. This stretch of road is between El Reno and Weatherford, Oklahoma. Other stories associated with him are sometimes he'll jump out in front of the car and you'll think that you have hit him. And you get out and discover that nobody's there. Some people have actually picked him up and he'll get in the car, and some other things may happen. Different reports of sometimes he'll freak out in the back of the car and you let him out because he's freaking out, and then drive down the road. There he is on the side of the road again. Sometimes you'll pick him up, take him into the back of the car, and as you're driving down the road, all of a sudden he disappears. There are some, there have been accidents along that stretch of road, so there could be any number of people. This is one of the articles. 5 dies, busts its trailer. May or may not be any of these particular people, but always could be. And so, here's a photo of one of the wrecks along that stretch. So it's hard to know who the vagabond actually is. A lot of times he's seen during these, the misty weather or rainy weather. That's usually when people see him and they take pity upon him because, like, oh, here's this guy walking out in the rain or on a cold, chilly night and it's misty. People want to pick him up so he doesn't get hit by a car. And then, like I said, all those different things can possibly happen where he freaks out in the back seat, or he disappears, or he jumps out in front of the car and you think you've hit him. But it seems like whichever of those things happen, you eventually see him walking along the side of the road again a few miles further up. It's really weird.
So then I wonder, it's probably a residual, obviously. Or it just seems like a replay,
It's interesting because a lot of it seems residual, where and people have asked us before, and this has recently come up. In fact, it was a question that was part of the panel that we just had this past weekend at Kelly McCarville's event, where difference between residual haunts and intelligent haunts, and can they happen at the same time? And this is actually one of those cases where it is almost like having a residual and an intelligent haunt at the same time, although the definitions of either one, you would almost think you could not possibly have that situation. But the fact that you're always seeing this guy walking along the side of the road, that seems residual. But like when he gets in the car and starts freaking out, that seems kind of intelligent. The jumping out in front of the road and you think you hit him, that could be residual. But the actual getting in the car part is the moment where it's like, that could be intelligent. But then some people have let him out, or, well, I guess I already said that. Some people have just let him out, though, without the freaking out, I guess is what I meant to say. But they still see him down further along the road, which seems residual. It's weird. It's really weird. And I've heard other stories about not necessarily just a hitchhiker, but other just entities on the side of the road, like strange, ghoulish women with no faces and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different types of spirits. All right. So you guys had a lot of comments. I'm seeing if there's any questions down in here. All right. Robert Hanna, I was going to say residue haunting. Yeah, I mean, it's that one's almost like really hard to tell. I would generally say residual haunting, but just some of those little moments in there seem almost very intelligent in nature. So some other ones, and then we'll see what you guys have for questions. So the A229 this is in England, and so this is kind of it is a horrific case. So this is one where you can actually trace it back to a particular accident it was a night before the wedding, and terrible crash along this highway, and the 3 girls, including the bride, did die. So here's the 3 girls. And this is the area here where the accident actually happened. And there's a lot of different reports of, seeing the girl. This is basically a residual haunt. All the reports out of this are residual, where kind of like that vagabond again, she'll step out into the road and you think you hit her. Some people have reported picking her up and they drive down the road, and then she gets out, and then she disappears, headed apparently to the wedding. So the wedding was in Chatham, so down this stretch of road is where the wedding was supposed to be. And so people will pick her up and drop her off here, and then she'll just disappear. So it seems very, very residual in nature, and very sad as well because, of course, it was going to be her wedding the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely more residual stuff there, but that's the type of reports you get with these hitchhikers. Don Francisco, we have a teenage girl called Little Egypt that died on her way to the prom here. If you go to the road, and I was going to say residue haunting. Maybe it's just residual, the autocorrect getting flipped to residue. Residual haunting, roll down the window and she will ride with you. Yeah. So Sherry asked, can there be more than one? Like maybe he cloned himself and be multiple of him at the same time. So a clone of the same spirit?
I don't know how that works.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about cloning the spirit.
Like, I don't know who would be in control of that. Or like, if it's the presence is so strong that it like, bloop. What's that one movie called?
Which one?
Multiplicity.
Oh, Multiplicity with Michael Keaton. And yeah, I like that one. Yeah, and they ended up making a copy of a copy, and he's just like, all he wants to do is eat pizza, and he calls the guy Steve, and that's not even his name. Hi, Steve. I used to, my son Colin, when he was really little, and he saw the movie, I would start calling him Steve. But he knew what I was talking about, so yeah. Kathy Ciliento says, I had a strange experience while driving. I was on my way to work. We were running a bit late, so I was driving kind of fast. Was coming up on a bad curve, coming off the bridge. Something tapped me very hard on the shoulder. I had to hit the brakes and slow up a bit to see what the heck that was. I was alone in the car, which made me turn around and look and see if someone was back there. As I slowed up and turned around to look, I got a flat tire. The hubcap flew off the tire. Thank goodness I slowed down as I drove off the curve, I guess is what it's supposed to be. So, okay. Well, I'm glad you're okay. Yeah, be careful. Of course, somebody's apparently trying to get your attention, but still be careful because you are driving. So, Tom McNicholas says, spirit always picks the person and follows them. Do they? Is this in reference to something else that I missed? Okay. Heather Steele asks, what if it was identical twins instead of clones? That's actually a good point, because with some of the accidents on that stretch of road, multiple people died. I don't know specifics about those people that were in the articles. I could look it up, but that's a good question. What if a set of the people that were in the accident, 5 dying in one crash? What if a couple of them were twins?
Could be.
Good point. Good point.
Mm-hmm.
All right, then we'll hit the other one. So those are very, very similar. The A229 and then whatchamacallit, Route 66. So then there's Resurrection Mary. Tom, you can chime in on this down there. So basically, the legend is that Mary was at a local dance hall, and she never made it home that night. And basically, somewhere along this road, Archer Ave, she died. And what happens is that people will see her. She'll ask for a ride, and she'll get in the car and will ask to be dropped off at Resurrection Cemetery. Now, the gates in this photo are open, but at night they are closed. And what will happen is when she gets dropped off in front of the gates, people will turn around again, and then suddenly she'll be behind the gates. Other people have reported they'll drive by the cemetery and they'll see her behind the gate, holding the bars with her hands. And so it looks like I have something behind there. Oh yeah, the articles. Let me turn those off real quick. So they've had to replace the gate here. So you can see the bars as they are now all fixed up, but then these are the bent bars here, which you can almost really see indentations there from her fingers. And so this is where she's supposed to be holding the bars. So Tom McNicholas is saying Archer Ave has always been a haunted road. So Tom used to live down the street from there, so he's very familiar with this story. So Tom, have you actually ever seen Resurrection Mary? That would be pretty interesting if you have. So there's a couple of ideas as to who she may be. So one is Marie Bregovy. The crash locally in the area. So, okay, Resurrection Mary. You'd have to change Marie to Mary. And then the other one is Anna Norcus, which I don't know if it was her middle name or a nickname, but it was Mariha. And so she's the other possibility as to who Resurrection Mary may be. But yeah, so that's the Resurrection Mary story. And again, it's another one. She's on the side of the road. People pick her up and they drop her off, and then all of a sudden she's just gone. She disappears. Yeah, or she does the weird thing with the bars there. So Tom has never seen her, but yeah, he has lived in the area and knows a lot of the legends, of course. Look like there are some stories or questions back here. We'll check them out. Robert Hanna, there's a road near where I live that's supposed to be haunted by a guy holding a lantern, pulling people over, asking them if they've seen his daughter. He said to be seen near an old tree. Interesting. Don Francisco, I was in a nightclub called the Baja in St. Charles. Sitting at the bar all night, I kept getting tapped on the shoulder and nobody was there. Greg Rinkin told me that nightclub is haunted as a teenage boy who is mischievous. I guess he was the one messing with me all night. So you're familiar with this?
I think it's the Baja Rock Club, if I remember correctly. I've never actually been in it, but I'm familiar with the name now.
Yeah. Well, that's in this area. I mean, St. Charles that's where we had the Goldenrod event. That's Salt and Smoke. Great food.
Yeah.
We like St. Charles. But I haven't been there either, of course. But so local haunt, we might have to check that out. Cool. So what else you guys have here? See, and Tom says Anna is the one mostly associated to Mary. Okay, thanks for clearing that up. Yeah, I mean, just from my research, those two came up, so that's who I included. So there was one other that I was going to mention. I didn't have any slides for it, but it popped up in my head as we were talking, and now it kind of escaped me because other things came up. Yeah. So Tom says the bar across the street from the cemetery still puts out a Bloody Mary for her at the corner of the bar. Really? Is that like a nightly thing?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's a nice tribute.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what was the other story I was going to mention? Darn it. Got off track. Short-term memory. Gone. But I mean, it's really interesting, all the very similar stories from... Oh, I remember what it was. Is the Headless Peddler. So this is before... as we talked about it earlier, before automobiles, there were still stories like this, just a little bit different. And so with the Headless Peddler, this is a Maryland story, and a long time ago there was a peddler who was murdered. His stuff was stolen. He was decapitated in the attack, and so when they buried his body near the roadside where he had been killed. And I forget the reasoning behind it, but they didn't bury the head with the body, and I think maybe it was they couldn't find it when they went to bury him or whatever the heck it was. And so for years, people would see the Headless Peddler, the guy who got murdered, walking up and down the road, and then at times pointing at the ground with a stick. and nobody could figure out for a long time what the heck the deal with the stick was. But he'd walk up and down the road. People would see him all the time. And then finally, there was a local farmer who, or maybe it was a mill or whatever the heck it was, he was digging up some of the land and came across a skull. They determined that it was a human skull, and his brain just kind of clicked. Well, maybe this is the skull of the headless peddler. So they went to the burial site of where the headless peddler was buried, put the skull on the body, reburied it, and they never saw the headless peddler again. So they think that what the peddler was doing was pointing at the ground with the stick as to where his head was. So that's a fun story, in any case. But yeah, that was, before automobiles. There were still, haunted roads. You hear about. Of course, there's Sleepy Hollow, the Headless Horseman, which actually there is truth behind that legend. And when I was in Rhode Island, Christopher Rondina, who had a table next to me, he actually did research into the whole legend of the Headless Horseman, and brought it all the way back to Europe and Germany and all that, where the original story comes out of. So there's actually some truth into that legend. Good.
I like it when urban legends have some truth in them.
Yeah. I was supposed to get that book from him, but then he ended up having, ironically enough, car problems and couldn't make it the second day. From Heather Steele, can a spirit on a road reach out to certain people in dreams? When I was younger, I had a very lucid dream about a spirit on a local road. He was dressed in 1700s clothing and cried out for me to help him. Then I woke up. I don't see why not. If it's an intelligent spirit, if they choose to try to interact with you, then sure.
Yeah.
Now, if it was just like a residual haunting, a playback, probably not. And this is kind of an interesting thing, though. But the intelligent spirit of that residual haunt could reach out to you, because they're two different things. So, like, let's say this. So, you're seeing the drifter, the vagabond, walking on the side of the road. It's just a residual haunt. He's walking on that part of the road every, October 14th. And there he is. So that's a residual haunt. But his actual intelligent spirit could be elsewhere, hanging out at his house or whatever. The energy trapped there plays back every October 14th or whatever, but his real spirit is wherever it is. What?
Can they separate like that? Can you have a one person that's passed on and have the two energies
it's not a
at the
separation.
same time?
It's not separation. The residual haunt is just a capturing of energy. And we don't know why it's played back, but every once in a while, there it goes. It gets played back. It's just a capturing energy and a playback, so it's not an actual spirit. We can call it a ghost, the ghost of the event that happened, but it's not the actual person's spirit. The person's actual spirit is somewhere else. So the two things can exist: the actual playback of the event and the person's spirit show up somewhere else. So I hope that answered the question. I kind of threw you off there for a second.
I was like,
You're like, what's this guy talking about?
And would the two be in the same place at the time? Be like, hey, that's me. That's me you see right there.
You could. Your intelligent spirit could go back and witness the event, which would probably be traumatizing.
Be like, hello, pay attention. That's me.
Yeah.
That's me right there.
Oh, we could make a movie on that. Like maybe the spirit, the actual intelligent spirit, keeps trying to bring people back there to watch the event, because maybe there's some little detail that people keep missing, and they want them to make sure. Look at this part here. What do you think? Dun, 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 dun. All right. So what else you guys have? Tim Schoen says there was a story at nearby Moline of a spirit walking up and down what is now known as the Avenue of the Cities, or something like that. Read about it in a book I used to have. All right, very cool. Yeah, there's a lot of those different haunted road stories. They're very cool. Let's see.
Hello, Tanya Hain. Speaking of twins.
Oh, is she in there? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see, Melanie Badger. That's the Haglin. Do quite a bit of off-roading. The Mojave Trail, an extension of the Spanish Trail Mormon Road, has some eerie vibes. I've heard horses, bootsteps, and seen a few things can't explain, especially strange out in the middle of the deserts. Well, but if it's part of one of those trails, the Spanish Trail Mormon Road, not everybody survived those long treks, and so I would imagine along that there's probably unmarked graves. I mean, they probably would have been marked at the time that they died. But any of those, the Oregon Trail, and yes, it was a video game, but people really made that trek from the Midwest out to Oregon, and many times, on the old wagon trails, people would die, and they do some last rites and bury them and put a marker, but the markers would deteriorate over time, and so there's a lot of unmarked graves out on those trails. So that's not surprising. So Kathy Cillian loves the story of the Headless Horseman. Very cool. I'm behind. Betty Lange, how far can a hitchhiker go? That's a good question. I don't know.
You think maybe if the event that happened to them was traumatic enough, it would keep them bound to the same stretch of highway?
Well, I mean, if it's just a playback, I expect that could probably only resonate so far out, right? As far as like an intelligent spirit that could go wherever, I think a lot of them feel trapped, and so they just contain themselves within an area. But a playback is probably confined. Tom McNicholas says, when you come to the Chicago Ghost Con, you'll see and be in the entire area where Resurrection Mary traveled. Oh, we're going to do a Resurrection Mary video. That's in October, middle of October. Tom, you can throw the dates in there. And also Spook Show Con's coming up here in August 17th. So, was it 17th and 18th? So be sure to come to that. Let's see. What else you guys have? Don Francisco, 2 blocks from my house, there's a black metal fence that runs along a property. And for the last 23 years, whenever I drive by, I see a shadow person standing there day or night. But I'm very unnerved by the shadow person. I have wanted to approach it and talk to it, but something is holding me back. I do pick up that the person died there, but it's too weird even for me. Hey, Don, I'm doing a book on shadow people. It'd be very cool if you could actually walk up to that shadow person and ask it some questions and interview it like we've all wanted to do. That would be amazing. At least if you go and check it out and just kind of report back what you see, that would be cool too. So, let's see. Tom McNicholas, when I was driving back from Salem, Mass, we got the Mass Turnpike and heard a loud scream and thought I hit something, pulled over, and there was nothing or any mark on the car, though thought a witch was following me home. Where along the Mass Pike? Because I used to live in Massachusetts, so I would be really interested to hear where that was. Cool. Let's see. There's some shadow people conversation going on down in there. That is awesome. So yeah, I've been working a lot on the shadow person book lately, at least as much as I can with all the traveling that I've been doing. Hoping to get it out by the holidays. That's the goal. So, yeah, so Dawn's going to try to approach the shadow person. Very cool. Trying to think. I know there was another story that popped in my head here just a moment ago. Hey, there's Donna Nunnally. Hi, Donna. How you doing? Sorry I haven't been at Zen lately. Been on the road a lot.
I've been there.
Shauna's been there.
Yep. Because I got some selenite pyramids for each side of the bed.
That was a fantastic birthday present. Thank you very much. Appreciate that for sure. So it's supposed to help with nightmares, which I wasn't even telling you that I was having nightmares, but yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Well, I ended up, but I hadn't for a long time.
Well, maybe this will make
it should
that
help.
stay at bay, you know?
I hope
And
so.
a dream catcher.
And a dream catcher. I need to put the dream catcher up. So Tom says just outside Boston. Okay, I lived in Western Mass, but okay. Okay, Nichelle Thompson, are there any places in Ohio that have ghost travelers or spirits like that travel with people. Where there was that rest area that we talked about before, that was just outside of Toledo. I'm trying to think any places that have ghost travelers or spirits that travel with people. Trying to think offhand, because most of the places that I've gone to in Ohio that are haunted, usually, they stay there. I have, when I was at like Ohio State Reformatory, told them, okay, you guys got to stay here, that sort of thing. Well, I think we did that when you were there too, because there was stuff that was kind of reaching out to you while we were there.
Yeah, there's some pretty interesting stuff there, and it wasn't at night, and there was other people milling about, so I was just kind of looking for it was just going to be, well, there's not going to be much investigating because it's pretty much like a public hunt, and there's going to be people walking around. Nobody's going to be on the same page about it and stuff like that. So just that, stuff happened there, and there were times whenever there was no people, we kind of break away from the pack a little bit and wander, and it's a great place. I would go back.
Talking about haunted Ohio roads, the closed section of Gore Orphanage Road, where you got the buzz in the ear.
Ooh, yeah, that was a good one. And there was a little bit of a heads up that something was going to happen, because I was just like walking along, and all of a sudden, what is that? And then all of a sudden, bzz.
And what did it feel like?
Oh, I felt like someone put a vibrator in my ear. That's exactly what it felt like.
Yep.
It was funny though, because it was so unexpected, and then it was kind of similar to the vibrating hand on the back of my skull, on the other side of the pool at Mineral Springs. And it was just like, whoa. it just, And it's always, sometimes you don't really feel it, before it happens. And then just all of a sudden it's this significant just buzz. And it's like, hey. Oh, now both twins are in the house.
Oh, cool.
Yay.
Heather's still laughing at you.
It's true,
the
though.
big laugh face. That's awesome. Yeah, Nichelle. So yeah, I remember you live in the Cleveland area. So that closed down portion of Gore Orphanage Road, not too far from Vermilion, and it got closed. There was again urban legends. People were saying that the road got closed down because there were kids hanging down at the old ruins of the mansion that would terrorize motorists as they were coming down the hill. The road got closed down because of a big storm in, I think it was 1968, that was basically like, it was on the 4th of July. It was like a hurricane coming in off of the lake. People were literally like getting picked up off the ground during this storm. And basically that storm wiped out that section of the road. It's basically a cliff.
Yeah, you can see like the part of the rail where the guardrail came, like the whole road that held the guardrail just went.
Yeah, it's like there's not even a full lane up there. I mean, it's like a little path and then straight down to the river.
You're like hugging the side of the whatever going through there. But
yeah, it's kind of crazy.
It's worth it though, because
it's a cool hike.
It's a historic walk.
Yeah,
it's a part history.
Yep. And a lot of mistold history at that. So. Robert Hanna says, I did Friday Night Ghost Rides Marathon. Cool. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate that. Glad you enjoy those. Yes. Binge as much as you can. Dawn is laughing.
I mean, it's true, and it's like, even like your cell phone being on vibrate, oops, it's just, it was a really strong buzz. And totally unexpected. It's like, now what?
Yeah, and unfortunately, I had the camera turned off at that point in time because we'd already gone all the way up, did everything at the top, and so we're just come back down. So it's like, we don't need too much footage of us walking back down. And of course, that's when something happened.
Yeah.
Man.
And just there was nothing. There was nothing. I wasn't expecting anything, so I wasn't just anywhere particular. And all of a sudden, I was looking off towards. I was on that right side, like some wood, a little bit of wood area, and just it just basically just stopped me in my tracks. And there was not a I slowed down. There was like I was just walking along, and it's like, wait a minute, what's that? And
then buzzed.
there it was, and I just like stopped. It was like something just latched onto me. I didn't feel anything, just whatever that was. And then there was nothing else after that.
Betty Lange has an Illinois question. She says, in Illinois, I think there is a blood cemetery that has a bridge near where people claim a car follows them. Does that sound familiar at all?
Is that blood point? It's supposed to have some like really dark story to it, some kind of dark energy attached to it.
I guess we're going to have to look that up.
Yeah. So someone was talking about it not too long ago. I can't remember.
I mean, there's always the urban legends of the car following them with the headlights off or whatever that is. I mean, those are goofy. One that's kind of interesting, though. Okay, so Black Bear Church and Cemetery, the cemetery's right across the road. The guy that first introduced me to that when it comes to cars, so the church has a lot of different shadow entities associated with it. There's the crawler that I always talk about, and it also has these like little short shadow people that are supposed to peer in the windows, and they don't actually come inside because that's supposed to be like the crawler's domain or whatever. But what he reported was that they were seeing those short shadow people, and there was like this huge gust that came up out of the basement that like blew them backward, that's kind of usually the crawler's domain. And they decided to get out of there, and when they got to the car, they were seeing like these fingerprints and like nail prints and stuff like that down the side of it. And then they got in and started driving away, and they were seeing like the handprints appear on the back of the car. So that was his first-hand account, and I just have to comes down to whether I believe him or not. So, but considering I have had a lot of crazy experiences at that particular church, it's like he might not have been lying about that. So, let's see what else you guys got down here in the chat. We are getting a little bit close to the end, I guess. How much time we have left here? Yeah, we got.
Remind me. I'm going to look it up.
So.
That blood.
Yeah, that blood.
I think it's Blood Point.
Blood Point? Okay.
I want to say. And I think it's north of here or something like that.
Robert says he loved the video on the Faceless Nun. Thank you very much. That was the latest Friday Night Ghost Fright, which was a couple weeks ago now because I've been on the road for the last couple of weeks. All right. So Andrew Cox says he's seen a shadow person at Malvern Manor. Very, very cool. So Heather Steele asks, sounds silly, but can spirits take the form of vehicles? I mean, there are ghost cars. So you were talking about that a little bit earlier.
Yeah, and totally unexpected, and it was my first one, really. I mean, I was coming up, and they had a stop sign, but I'm usually pretty aware of my surroundings when I'm driving, just for safety purposes, especially in a rural area, because you never know when a kid's gonna, come popping out of their, yard or whatever. And I was taking the back way, so there was going to be a lot of that. And so I was watching, but then all of a sudden I see this red car coming, and then it was just a flash of when it was just there, and it was gone. And there was nowhere for it to go because I was right there. And, it would have had to cut me off, or it would have had to swipe me going the other way, and then there was nothing there stopped at the intersection. It was just a quick flash of a car, and then it was gone. So I've also seen a ghost cat before too. Not too long after I moved here, my car was in the local shop for a couple of days, and I had to walk to and from work at the old place, so it was quite a bit of a trek. And all of a sudden, there was a cat next to me.
And then it was gone?
It was just boom. It was there for, about a block, and then it was just gone.
Oh, okay.
I was like, oh, hey, so I didn't touch it or anything, I'm just like, hey, how's it going? And then I'm just, walking along. I look down again and gone.
Yeah, there have been a lot of, but when it comes to ghost cars, there have been a lot of reports of ghost cars, people seeing, phantom like headlights coming up behind them, and it turns out to be some old car, and it was along a stretch of road in which, some sort of accident happened, and those are usually residual haunts, is what they turn out to be, just a playback of something that had once happened. So Linda Miller asks, I forget where it was, but wasn't there a movie based on a true story about a bus of kids that got hit by a train, and if you stopped on the tracks, they would push your car across the tracks, and you could see their handprints? Yes. I'm trying to think of what the name of that movie was. It was like Handprints or Fingerprints or something like that. It was with Lou Diamond Phillips, and what was really cool for me about that particular movie, it was filmed in Guthrie, Oklahoma. The train station that was used was the old Santa Fe Rail Depot, which is very haunted. The mistress from the Harvey Girls is haunting there. The Stone Lion Inn was used in that movie, so there are scenes filmed within the Stone Lion Inn, as well as some other locations around the town. So, yeah, I mean, the movie itself was okay, but just the fact that they used Guthrie as a as the setting. I mean, it's not Guthrie, like in the storytelling, it's not Guthrie, Oklahoma, but that's the town that they used to film at. So, so cool stuff. As far as what the story was based on, I mean, yeah, you get the a lot of times those are urban legends. There are several locations of cars, train tracks, or like a gravity hill where people will push the car, and sometimes you see the handprints and stuff like that. So there's a lot of those types of urban legends that are around, and so I expect at some point in time there was some truth of there. Yeah, there was a bus of kids, or maybe it was maybe there was a couple of kids that died in a car accident or whatever it was, like hit by a train or whatever other accident happened along that road. And over time, the story got changed up. So Kathy Cilianta says it is Bloods Point Road. Mm-hmm. There you go. All right. I have 6 app updates available. Thank you, Adobe. Mm-hmm. This is from Jesse Van Buskirk. Can spirits take the form of a human and animal morph? So, like shapeshifters.
I still claim to have an experience with that. Although I never saw it shift into an animal, it didn't feel like a human. It did look human, but the vibe that I got was that an animal was nearby, and when I looked, it was a human.
Okay.
And so I kind of wondered, it was kind of a bit weird, and so then I kind of just, the thought that it might be both just kind of entered my head, for a split second. And I entertained the thought for a minute, and I thought about it for quite a while afterwards. But then I didn't have any proof because I didn't see anything other than a human. But it felt like an animal was nearby, and when I looked up expecting to see one, and who knew what I was expecting to see because I live near the woods, mm-hmm. It was human.
Yeah, there are a lot of Native American legends about shapeshifters, and I say Native. I mean, yes, they do, but you can even go back into ancient Egypt and find stories of shapeshifters. So I have to believe that at some point in time there was some validity to those stories, and so there may be some of those still out there. Tom McNicholas says Blood Point Road and Bloods Point Cemetery is in Cherry Valley. So we're going to have to make a trip to Cherry Valley.
Yep.
So Nichelle Thompson, do they have to be ghost cars? Can it be like ghost trains or buses or anything like that? Yeah, that happens too. I've heard of ghost trains pulling up into the station and things like that. So those happen. Not as often, I guess, because there's more vehicles, motor vehicles. But yeah, those happen. Yeah, Gravity Hill being an optical illusion. Yeah, that can happen. Betty Lange says, I think the family was named Blood. Yeah, in fact, I knew somebody with the last name of Blood. So it is an actual last name. Let's see what else you guys have. Linda Miller says that she's had a similar experience as you. Okay. Jesse says, I saw it as a kid, so it was worth a question. And here's Dawn Francisco. Native American Indians along the Pacific Coast believe that dolphins are actually the spirits of their children that have died. Interesting. Kathy Ciliento, question for Shauna. You pick up a lot of children's spirits. Have they ever asked you to find their families or mom or dad?
Not out loud. And I'm not like inside my head either. Like none of them have ever asked me to help them. They just kind of hang with me. So I
it's
have
kind of
to
like they
assume-
see you as the mother figure, right?
Yeah, I kind of have to assume that if they wanted my help, they would ask.
Okay.
You know, so maybe mom or dad or whatever is nearby, and then I'm just this, oh, look who's come to play with me type of person. You know, I've never had one ask me for help. I've
What
always
about,
found that
even
kind of
like
weird.
Byron was just kind of hanging out, even though he came to the house and all that stuff, he was just hanging.
Yeah, like not once did I hear, you know, or did I feel like he was wanting me to help him with anything. I haven't really had any spirits ask me for help. You know, now we did have one in the back room whenever Rita was in the cafe, specifically call out for her and say, Rita, help me.
Oh, okay.
There was also, it was documented that there was a man that got stabbed on the property and was drugged into that back room. They put his body back there and he
Gotcha.
died back there. So
Okay.
that was, you know, there was an actual human back there that was stabbed and died back there. So,
Yeah, I had the woman at Ferry Plantation ask me for help for basically to tell the staff that she didn't like the wake that was set up, because they had the best parlor set up in the motif of a wake happening at there at the house, and she didn't like that. So, you know, you hear the EVP is clear as a bell. Help me, you know. And then, you know, the other stuff that I got after that was about the wake that was set up. So,
I can't remember which cemetery we were at. I think it was Summit Grove, Rita and I. And we had an EVP of a woman whenever I was like walking nearby say, help her hear me.
okay.
And I didn't hear anything.
You didn't hear
of
it, though.
course.
Okay.
But
Betty Lange asking, has a hitchhiker ever screamed out loud? So, yeah, going back to the Route 66 story with that vagabond, that drifter, sometimes when people would stop and he would get in the car, after driving down the road a little bit, he would start like freaking out on them. So I think some of that included screaming, and then they just let him out. Other times, other reports, he wouldn't do that, and he'd just drive along and just disappear, or sometimes they drop him off somewhere. But there are some reports where he would just start freaking out in the back. So, you know, there was some more vocal type interaction there with him. So we'll kind of start wrapping it up here. But Robert Hanna says, there's a road here in my neck of the woods that's supposed to be one of the most famous haunted locations in Wisconsin called Witch Road. Legend has it that a witch lived in the woods. You can still see the remains of her house in the woods. They say if you go there on a full moon, you can see a little girl peeking behind the trees, see balls of light hovering over the ground.
oh, well, let's go there.
Sounds a little bit like the legend of Maul Dyer from Maryland, because there's, of course, she was wrongly accused of witchcraft and all that. We cover her story on the witch video.
I mean, it has a
from
witch, it
last
has balls
fall.
of light, and it has a child. So
Yeah, so
those
it's
are
got-
that's a recipe for me to go.
That's your complete checklist right there.
Yeah.
So,
Boom, boom, boom.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, so Betty Ling is asking where that's at since she's in Wisconsin. They have Witch Gulch near here, and Dell's Boats uses that story. Oh, I guess they do. Forgot I took the boats in the Dells when I was in high school. Yeah, okay. Don says another super interesting place to investigate: USS San Diego, the USS Midway, or is in San Diego, USS Midway, an aircraft carrier that's seen many wars. Residual and intelligent hauntings is very overwhelming. Yep. Kathy sailing to a road trip to Wisconsin. Yep. All right. All right, so I think that is going to wrap it up. Thanks for joining us tonight about Hitchhiker Ghosts. For those that listen to the podcast version of this, please go ahead and follow us or subscribe to the podcast on whichever podcast platform that you're listening to. And on the YouTube replay, of course, subscribe to the Haunted Road Media YouTube channel.